We are back at it again. Are we live? I imagine Nat can cut it anyway, but assuming we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
We can see Nat as well.
Whoa, this is crazy. Wow. We like this.
Men of Mine, episode 12, I believe we are on. It's been a little bit of hiatus for us, but that's why we built a back stock so that we can keep going weekly for the listeners. Always got to start it off with, if you're listening, you can drop a little like, subscribe, comment. We appreciate any of that. Not required by any means, but we definitely appreciate it.
All of it. On top of that, I don't know if y'all can tell, we are excited, all right? We are currently uploading right now as we're recording. We got good quality. We finally paid for a subscription. Like, this is legit, y'all. We are here. I hope y'all see a difference in the quality that you're getting from us. The content is going to be better. Everything's just, and it's 2024, right, Nick? It's 2024 and we back.
It is. So this is our first episode in 2024.
Yeah, first one in 2024.
Be way behind. I mean, tonight, to date ourselves, we got a big Miami Dolphins and Bills game tonight for the playoffs, and this is probably going to get released late spring, early summer. So our references will be a little out of time, but anyway, go Bills. Yeah, we are excited to be here. It's been a little bit for us. We had a little hiatus, a little holiday break. And it turns out you do get what you pay for. So our Christmas gift for the podcast and all the viewers was this new software.
And really, the biggest gift that we gave was giving Nat a break and not a headache. All right, so Nat, this is our gift to you. She got tired of dealing with uploading speeds being at 2 super califragilisticexpialidocious megabits a second. Like this, it wasn't working. But we're here. We're locked in. Yeah. Nick, I'm ready to kick off this year. Yeah. First episode of the year, episode 12. It's gonna be big.
It is that time of the year. Yeah. And like you said, gift to Nat. It turns out that there's a lot more work that goes into producing these than maybe we do on the end of what's our topic. Let's find a time. Let's jump on. Maybe do a little research. But today we're going to kick it off with a spicy one. This is something that just popped up on Reddit for me, I believe. But a quote or a tweet. Can you still call it a tweet if it's on X? I'm not sure. But by Adam Grant, who's really profound in my area of expertise, or at least where I would like to be an expert in, with organizational psychology and really all things psychology. He had a post. It caused a little bit of a stir from what I understand. I haven't dove too much into that, but a lot of debate back and forth over whether he is right, isn't right. And of course, he had great reasoning to back himself up too. But the quote was this: "The earlier kids get smartphones, the worse their mental health as adults." There's a new study, 27K people owning a smartphone younger predicts lower self-worth, motivation, and resilience, and more sadness, anxiety, and aggression, especially for girls. And then at the bottom, the one-liner, I think this is what did it for a lot of people: smartphones should wait until high school. Mike, what is your initial reaction to that?
So just initial reaction, as a matter of fact, when you dropped this in the chat the other day, my first thought was, yes, I agree. This is just initial, unfiltered first reaction. Mm-hmm. But then once I took a second, sat back and thought about it, I still agree with only part of it, though. And I think there is a stipulation that kind of comes in there, because I don't think it's having the smartphone necessarily that causes the low self-esteem per se. And I think that's the bulk of this. Like he said, it causes low self-esteem and a couple other things. It's the access to information. Actually, that's what it is. It's not the smartphone itself. Like me having this, if I was younger, my parents could put a bunch of locks on here, control a bunch of stuff. If I wasn't able to download certain apps, cool. But the ability to access pretty much anything I want to at any given time on my phone, I think that is what is contributing to the low self-esteem, the comparison, and a couple other things that ultimately, I won't say go down the same path, but it gives you access and avenues to pass of depression, anxiety, social anxiety, whatever that case may be. So again, it's not the smartphone itself. Like let's be clear. I don't know if he was necessarily saying, "Oh yeah, they got this smartphone." Like, "Oh, here we go. Here comes whatever comes with it." No. I think it is the access to information. I do believe as well that kids these days they have access to everything, and matter of fact, too much access. Like sometimes having limited access is probably better than having too much access. So that was my initial reaction to it.
No, I agree with a lot of that. I think that one, yeah, the smartphone is a gateway,
right,
to a bunch of different apps and platforms. I don't think it's directly responsible, but I do think he has a point. It's 100% indirectly responsible. And if you're limited to however many characters you can get these days to put out a statement on X, or even if you just don't want to have a giant paragraph that no one's going to read, this is a quicker way to get to it. I think you made a really good point, particularly with the comparison and accessing that information. It's the regulation for me once you get on the smartphone. In particular, the social media, to me, is the most apparent that really creates some of these issues that we see. He mentioned things like predicting lower self-worth, motivation, resilience, and seeing more. So if all of those are lower, and then on the other side, you've got more sadness, anxiety, and aggression, especially in girls.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I'm internalizing that as wellness and illness outcomes from a mental perspective. And so the smartphone seems to be creating more of these negative outcomes. I tend to dive in a little bit more than most people do with the research on that. And one of the biggest and easiest ways, and we've talked about this on and off the podcast, one of the easiest ways to set yourself up for that sadness, anxiety, and aggression is to live in an ego-involved state. In other words, to be consistently comparing yourselves to others and operating in the form of shame, guilt, and for your own pride.
Right.
I think that's the bigger issue. So maybe it's not the smartphone, but are the kids able to regulate themselves once they get on the smartphone?
Right.
To me, if you take away smartphone access, you get a new problem, which is that kids now don't like that their parents are being controlling.
Right.
I think that the same parents that would be successful in navigating this and explaining why it's important to not be consumed on this smartphone until later in life would be the same parents that probably don't have an issue with it because they've already set boundaries regarding the smartphone. And so to me, it seems like a Band-Aid approach almost.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think you hit on something that I was writing down. It's the self-control piece. It's the same way, and I don't want to be what's the word I'm looking for? Like intolerant or what is the opposite of sympathetic? Like unsympathetic? Is that it? I don't technically know. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not looking to be inconsiderate here. But it's the same way with people who claim to have like unhealthy relationships with food. Like that is where my mind goes. It is not about you. I think you should be able to eat whatever you want. Like unless the doctor tells you cannot have certain things or you have an allergy that may unalive you, like at some point, then you should be able to eat with whatever you want, but there has to be a limit with control. You have to know when to tell yourself, okay, that's enough. Okay, I don't need this for myself anymore. Or if I'm going to have this, I'm going to add in a couple extra workouts here. Like it's the same way with the social media. All right, I'll get on here. I'll scroll. If you want to scroll for an hour or 2 hours, it may sound like a crazy amount of time. It's not when you think about it. Like you can scroll for 2 hours like it's nothing. Scroll for 2 hours. What are you going to do with, now let's find 4 hours out of your day to do something constructive? Like you got to have that self-control to be able like, all right, that was enough. I'm going to put this down for a minute. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to listen to a podcast, like something different that I'll say pulls you back to reality, because behind the social media, you don't know who is what they're doing. Pulls you back to reality and kind of grounds you to what you have going on here. So when you talk about self-control, like that piece is super huge for me, because being somebody who pretty much fasted from social media for probably 2 years, if not a little bit longer. That self-control piece was really hard at first. Like the first couple months, I had a desire, and I would open my phone and go to look for an app. I was like, oh shoot, it's not there. And so after a while, I knew it wasn't there. My mind didn't want to go and open that app. I found other healthy things to fill that time with. And so just recently, I re-downloaded Instagram, started to get back on there, just kind of like catch up and see what people were doing and whatnot. And I've noticed that my sleep patterns are a little different. The way I feel when I wake up in the morning, the routine and habits that I'm kind of going back to are starting to reappear. And so I've had to even tell myself, like, nope, exit out, just delete the app again. And if you want to download it for like the weekend or something like that, then it's cool. But that self-control piece is really, really big. And I think a lot of people miss that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you hit it on the head too with the habits and the routine almost. The time in the day is going to be the same regardless of what you do with it. If you're not able to pull yourself off of the app, what often happens, or the screen, it could be a TV, it could be an iPad, it could be anything.
Facts.
If you're not able to pull yourself off of that, once you've been on it too long, we run into these people who have screen times in excess of 8 hours in a single day, which is a very real thing. As crazy as it is to think about, a third of your time was spent there. I think we've all at some point been there, whether it was a kid playing video games or
for sure.
Just engulfed in social media, or it's a full day of football on a Sunday is another one that gets me. But having a self-control is massive. You mentioned that unhealthy relationship with food. A really cool study that they ran, I don't remember when exactly it was, but essentially what they did was they wanted to see if there was a correlation with feeling in control and eating disorders. And what they found is that even if they took two identical demographic groups, so they matched these groups, and half of them have an eating disorder and half of them do not have an eating disorder, one variable that was different, and you could tell night and day whether it was somebody from the eating disorder group or somebody who was from that control group. Even if you didn't have that information available to you, you had to basically ask them, how much control do you have over your eating? And the people who struggled with feeling like they were in control of their life in general, but especially with food, were often the ones, not even often, it was a pretty strong match that they were the ones who struggled with that eating disorder. And you see similar things across all of the psych research. Is people who feel out of control and are constantly searching for it don't tend to have great wellness outcomes. And going back to that Adam Grant tweet, if we're struggling with these wellness outcomes, or we're experiencing more of that ill-being, it's got to be some level of that feeling in control. And I think it's too easy to rely on the instant gratifications that you can get on technology. It's phenomenal and it can be a beautiful thing, but it also can be really, really easy to just click the button and get what you want and no longer want to just enjoy that process that we've talked about so often on here. There isn't a process. It's a button and then you're good. On Instagram, you can just scroll forever. You don't have to have a process to it. You can enjoy the whole thing. But what meaning and value can you gain from that if that's what you spend your day doing? Ultimately, it usually doesn't feel as fulfilling.
Hey, and to your point, you talked about self-gratification. I believe that there is a very, very strong, I guess, like maybe opposition to self-gratification, or and again, I don't know what word to call it in particular, but you get the self-gratification of being able to log on to interact with friends, people you don't know, family members, whatever the case may be. All the while, you're probably subconsciously, I want to go back to the comparison piece, comparing what you have or what you don't have to what you see. So that's why I was saying I'm kind of having a hard time coming up like, what is the opposite of gratification here. And I don't want to call it self-sabotage. I don't know if that would be the equivalent of it, but for lack of better words, like that's what I see it as sometimes is, okay, I get to log on, I have all this access, I get to interact here.
Yeah.
The dopamine is being active and it's activated for sure. Everything that I'm doing is feeding me, but the consequence of this self-gratification currently is probably going to be some self-sabotage on the back end, because subconsciously I'll get to thinking about, oh, this is something I want, or this is something I don't have. How do I get it? Is it obtainable? And if it's not obtainable, what does that cause me to do, kind of in between the lines here? So that self-gratification piece is really, really big. And I don't think people understand how in tune you have to be with yourself and what you have and what you're capable of, or the resources you have, so you're not in a place where you feel like you don't have enough, or what you currently have is not sufficient for your lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a similar term out there to your self-sabotage, but self-handicapping I think is relevant here as well.
Yeah.
How I would describe self-handicapping, we have to dive in with comparison first. The cool part about this smartphone right here is that I can go and do and search whatever I want. So if I'm interested in something, I can get more information on it. It's a really easy way for me to find things that I'm passionate about and dive deeper with them. Even on something like Instagram, I can find people, accounts, organizations, anything that I want to find and follow, I can get there. And that part is really cool because you want to support your interests and you want to do things that you're passionate about.
Right.
The catch is when you see the end product of someone else and that's all you see, you don't really get the full picture. And so one thing we talked about a couple episodes ago was this idea of everybody's got a day one. Most people aren't posting their day one online. That's not really, I would say, the point of online. Now, I would love for it to be, but truthfully, I'm seeing somebody's day 400, and then I'm looking at that and saying, dang.
Day one ain't pretty. Day one ain't pretty, and nobody wants to show that. Nobody wants to show the hard work that goes into day one. And it may not be the hardest day, but it's definitely, if you had to number them, probably top 3 hardest days of whatever the journey is. But yeah, you're right. Nobody wants to show day one ever.
No. And if you're going to compare your day one to other people's day 400, 500, 1,000, whatever it may be, you're already setting yourself up for failure. And that's where that self-handicapping comes in, where you're already making excuses for yourself before you've even really begun the task. So we're obviously always talking about running. I can make the excuse that, well, Mike's in better shape than me and he just looks like he's more committed, so I might not even want to run the race. What type of thought is that if my goal was to better myself?
Right.
And a lot of times we have these things that we want to do and these things that we want to achieve, whether it's a career, whether it's a school, something artistic. We see these people doing similar things and we think, oh, that's so awesome. And then we dive in and the immediate first thing we do is compare ourselves to somebody who's like a finished product, or we go and try it a little bit and we give up because it wasn't as easy as the TikTok video that was showing us how to do it made it seem. And that's a really dangerous thing. And so again, I think it's the regulation. When you're on there, how are you processing things, and are you thinking fair things when you're making these comparisons? Because I think they're going to be inevitable in the world. And part of that is also, we love connection. We'll dive a little bit more in with that, but I saw you were writing something down. What do you got over there?
No, you're good. You're good. I'm trying to just capture different notes and points you hit on so I can have some linear thoughts here. But don't compare your day one to someone else's day 400. I think that really hit for me, because I like to think of myself as I'll say semi-glossed product. I won't say I'm far from my final form, like my final finished product. I think I'm kind of like semi-gloss. I'm getting there, but I do even find myself comparing my day 1, day 45, my day 320, whatever it is, to somebody else's day 780. I've definitely done it, and I still find that I do it from time to time. And so I think that was just something that hit home with me, and I wrote it down to remind myself, like, don't compare your day 1 to somebody else's day 400. You can only get to day 400 by having a day 1 through 399. Like, you can't skip days. And it sounds so cliche. You can't cheat the process. You cannot cheat the process. If you try to cheat the process, you're not going to get the outcome that you're looking for. And when you go to compare day 400 to day 400, you're probably really going to be looking at like a day 285 to day 400 because you took shortcuts trying to get there. And it kind of ties back into the whole having access to so many things. I'm sorry. Yes, it does tie back into having access to different platforms. But even beyond that, I think it goes deeper into having access to the pretty things. Yeah. Or like you said, the pretty finished product getting posted and getting highlighted versus the day 1, the day 7, the day 10 being the thing that's glorified. Like, hey, y'all, I started. I wish so many more people would glorify, hey, this is my day 1. This is my day 10. This is my day 20. I started. I'm 3 weeks in. You need to start. And it could be something as simple as that. Like, it didn't have to be anything mind-blowing, but to have that simple, this is my day 1. I started. I encourage you to start. Would probably help so many more people on their journeys versus having, again, that day 400, the finished product, and people seeing the miraculous, or what seems to be miraculous, pretty final and finished product.
Yeah. And a big piece too with that is I don't think by any means saying that the finished product isn't something worth sharing online through whatever medium, whatever it may be. The issue often becomes if I'm seeing that product, and again, I have not learned at this point how to regulate properly. And I think we all struggle with this. I don't think I'm an exception. I would be shocked if Nat or Mike, you felt you were a strong exception to this, but it's a very hard thing to do when you see a finished product of someone else and you don't derive a little of your own worth versus that on the scale of, can I do that? Can I not do that? If it's something you're genuinely interested in.
Yeah.
And that's when we really dive back into it's about challenging yourself on your day 1 and trying to get better throughout that journey rather than I'm not worth as much because I'm not able to do that right now. That's going to be a little toxic. That's the comparison that we want to avoid. I also want to bring up social media is often introduced as a terrible thing. It's rotting our brains. It's no good. There's a lot of benefit to it as well. I think more of the issue to me comes with the order of it. Again, we would probably be better off if we pushed and limited the usage of smartphones. And we would probably be better off if we just didn't have social media in a lot of ways. There's a lot of good things that come from it too, though. The networking that we are able to do in this day and age is phenomenal. And that really sets us up for success in different fields when we can have great minds collaborating with interest and passion. One thing we've talked about is I want the person who wants to be in the room, not necessarily the most talented. So if you can now get more people that want to be in the room, in the same room, progress can be big. Did you have your hand up? Sorry.
No. I was just agreeing with you. I was saying, like, right, that's a good point. Yeah, you're rolling.
Yeah, I think the connection is so important too. I think from an early age, we all crave attention and connection. I was reading The Body Keeps the Score yesterday, which is a multi-year journey for me because I am, I've said it before, really bad at reading books. I love the idea of it, but I don't sit down and often do it. And so one thing I've been trying to do recently is get a little bit more of a routine where I read at night. So far, I'm a couple days in and I'm enjoying it. The chapter I read last night had a lot to do with infants and their attachments with their mothers, and kind of that battle for attention. Because from an early age, you learn a lot from your mom and your dad and whoever else may be a big figure in your life. And even with infants, they crave their mother's attention. They're constantly seeking it. If they lose it, they try to get it back. Very, very simple concept, but we see it all the time in social media too. And it's at what point are we able to regulate ourselves and not determine our own worth off of the attention that we're getting, the likes that we're getting on our poster, traffic that we're getting sent to our page. And I think that's the piece when we go back to self-control, self-regulation. That's the one we struggle with. Connection's good. Meeting other people and growing and getting perspectives and insight from others is a wonderful thing. I wouldn't get rid of that, but I do think we've got a serious regulation crisis.
I would agree with all that. I would agree with all that. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but yeah, the self-regulation issue or problem that we have is big, and it's something that we need to work on. And I don't know necessarily where that starts or how we tackle it, but I would agree with you wholeheartedly about that. I do want to jump back to something that you said about I want the person who wants to be in a room, not the person who is the most talented. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I had necessarily heard that before. Maybe I have, just in a different way. But dig into that a little bit more, because I like that a lot, and I'm gonna start using that. I think that's really good from at least even a coaching standpoint. Like, I want the people who want to be here. I want the team members who want to be here and want to make this program good. I'm just using team as an example, not the person who's the most talented, because that talented person can be cancerous. Like, I want people who are gonna dig and fight for this team.
Yeah. So the idea is pretty similar to one that we have touched on in the past, which is just one of my professors had mentioned he knows in the first 10 seconds if he wants you to work for him or not, based on your enthusiasm and the energy that you bring into the room. I asked him about it a while later. I was like, how do you know in the first 10 seconds? And that was his explanation was, well, you wanted to be there. And I see it again and again in life. So it's something that sticks with me. I think especially in relationships, not necessarily super personal, but can be as well, for sure. I've seen it in like coworkers. I've seen it in classmates. I've seen it in close relationships that I've been in. But you really can't make someone want to be there. You can throw out as much information as you possibly can, but it's up to them to want to be there after that. Yeah. Which is interesting with social media and smartphones, because all that information is there. And if they want to be there and you've set limits, I think it could be a good thing. But that's where that comes from. Is just, I can't make you want to be in the room, but if you do want to be there, then I can help you get the most out of it.
No, that's good. And I'm going to use that with I'm going back to coach track and field this spring at my high school. And I think that's, as we kick off our season here soon, or the official kickoff to the season, during our team meetings and whatnot, the preseason stuff, I'm going to talk to the guys about that. Like, look, we want the people who want to be here. And I hope it doesn't come off as nasty or aggressive, but it's just transparency and being honest about where we're at. If you don't want to be here, that's cool. Mm-hmm. We can find something else for you to do. There are plenty of other activities to get involved in at the school. But as for us and this team that we have here and the goals that we're trying to accomplish, we want those who want to be here, who are going to contribute to the goals and the missions and the development of this team and of this program as a whole. So that's why I asked about that. I really like that. And I hope the guys see the value in it. I hope they see the value in that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything necessarily toxic about it. I do think how you phrased it is really good, and tying it with some sort of rationale is probably going to be the best way to do it, which is, I want people that want to be here. If you don't want to be here, I don't want you to be suffering or uninterested. And likewise, I don't want to be working with people who just don't want to listen to me talk.
Right.
If there's issues, that doesn't mean we blow it all up. We can have conversations and work through things together. But that core wanting to be here, wanting to grow, and wanting to develop together is something that would need to be done. And from there, you're kind of off to the races. No pun intended. But it's the same thing with the social media, right? Like, it's limits in those conversations. How many parents have genuinely had conversations with their kids that aren't stop that, I don't want you doing that anymore? Because we all know what happens when you tell someone not to do something. Suddenly there's an urge to do it. Hey, Mike, I think you should quit smoking cigarettes. And Mike, you know what? I'm going to do 2 now, just because you said not to do 1. Now it's like back and forth. For the record, Mike doesn't smoke, but you see that effect in kids all the time when you tell them what.
That, Nick. Appreciate setting the record straight. All right, yeah. It's not my thing. All right, not my thing.
But if it is your thing, I mean, that's you and your business. We're not here to talk down on that. So.
For sure. I appreciate the support either way. Okay, it feels good to be supported about the decision I'm making. I would hope that if I'm making stupid decisions, that you would tell me, Nick, and Nat, who y'all can't see. I hope that y'all would tell me, like, hey, Mike, that's a dumb decision. You need to be changing the game here. Okay, that's not how we roll.
Yeah. If I didn't, then as soon as we finish, Nat would.
I don't know. Nat's at button is broken. Okay, Nat at button is broken because she will throw a little shade and hope that you catch it's about you. She may not at you directly. She'll be like, so yeah, how do I feel about this very important topic to one single person on this podcast? And it's like, oh, who was that, Nat? I wonder why you didn't just say the name of that person. Either way, no, that's good. I'm glad we have the relationship about that. But as we tie it into social media, I also think there's another piece that needs to be talked about more, and it is the education of the parents. And you talked about it very briefly or kind of around it, but I don't think enough parents actually understand how useful social media can be. I think a lot of our parents grew up in an era where they were scared into thinking that social media was bad, or the internet as a whole. It was something super new. Nobody knew a ton about it. All they knew was that I have access to the whole world at my fingertips. Mm-hmm. There are some harsh realities that are very, very present, relevant, and possible. There are creeps out there, and I'll just leave it at that. There are some real creeps out there. So it is important to be safe as you use social media. But as we're talking about parents right now, I think it's important that they realize and understand how useful social media can be, the content that their kids are watching, how it can help them learn, because not everybody is a textbook person. Not everybody has the same learning abilities. All three of us are very different, and we've learned that as we've gone through this podcast. One of us may be a book person, one of us may be a podcast person, somebody else may be hands-on. And so for that child to have the social media at their fingertips, to be able, like you said, Nick, to collaborate with somebody else, whether it's a classmate, somebody else across the world, who can teach them the subject or the content in a way that they're able to best receive it. I think that if parents understood that a little bit more, they would be more susceptible and open to the good things that social media brings in. And it's crazy. I actually think that grandparents, or those who are grandparents, are a little more open to it sometimes than the parents are, because they want to connect back with their families, their kids, their grandkids. They want to be able to see them, FaceTime, pictures, follow them on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, see some of the Facebook pictures, all that stuff. And I think they are starting to realize that more and more. So there is a bit of a gap an information gap between the generations that needs to be filled in. But to your point, not all social media is bad. Everything is good and or bad in moderation. Like too much of anything is bad. So if we can find a way to create or not even create, but change the narrative that everything that comes with social media is bad, I think that changes the whole scope and outlook of the social media kind of, I won't say phenomena, but the social media realm right now.
No, I completely agree. And it's a double-edged sword, as always.
Yep.
We kind of didn't hardcore agree or disagree with the initial tweet. We're diving in and saying, well, it depends. He's got some good points and he doesn't have some good points. I think another good point to consider, worry is care. From the parent's perspective, if you're worried, it's probably because you value that outcome or are concerned with the wellness of whoever it is that's on the smartphone a little bit more. The issue is your intent of caring isn't going to be perceived by that if it's more of a do or don't do this. And so the biggest issue that I have with the phrasing of the tweet, and I would imagine there's some truth to this, I would love to talk to him about it. We don't have that resource, but maybe one day. The phrasing and how you go about it is just going to be you're going to live or die by it. If we just say do or don't do this, and we're less dependent on conversations and growing together and really seeing the perspectives, because not only does the parent have a perspective on this, the kid has a perspective on it too, and that needs to be valued and explored to properly have that conversation. And it's going to be really hard if you go in firmly on one side, because the truth is our generation in particular, one of the last ones where we are pretty well versed in technology. However, we did grow up going outside. And a lot of times with technology, you hear back in my day, you used to just go outside. You're wasting away on those screens.
Yep.
I mean, if you only want to look at the bad, yeah, there's also bad to only going outside. How much of, that relationship are you building or losing with your parents if we want to be glass half empty, right? If you're going and playing with the kids or you're running off with the kids, there's safe and unsafe parts of that too. I'm not saying one is better or worse, whether it's going outside of the internet, but I am saying there's pros and cons to both. Yeah. And I don't know if we often explore either the downside of how we grew up, because we mostly remember the good, or if we're exploring the upside of something that we don't like, and being able to ourselves explore that and consider both sides is a really big piece going forward when we're talking about setting limits and what is the right or wrong way to go about this.
No, you're absolutely, everything you said was spot on there. I have about that in particular. I don't know if I have anything additional of value to add to it, but I do want to ask, why do you think that he said young girls get hit the hardest? Why do you think that, or do you agree with that that statement?
So I think that I've been dove in with the article. However, in line with a lot of the other research, there is an increase of comparison when it comes to things like Instagram for girls. Our culture has bred that, not for better. I'm just going to flat out say it, for worse. And you tend to be much more ego involved on the phone when you're directly comparing yourself to other people. And I think girls are exposed to that a little bit more than men. I don't have any research to back that up on me right now, at least, but that would be my guess. I would love to check and find out. But I think that there's just higher standards on what a girl should look like in our society. And I don't agree with that, but I do think that's where we're at. And I think that's why they're more susceptible to sadness, anxiety, aggression, and more of those negative outcomes.
Sure. On the opposite side of that, though, I raise the question of, while, and I guess it's topic specific, because those were the characteristics that he described, girls being more susceptible to anger, depression, anxiety, comparison. I think when it comes to young men and boys at that age, they falter when it is time for them to grow up. I think it allows them to stay in an immature state for probably much longer than they should be. So while the young girls have to deal with the characteristics we've described already, I think for young men, I don't want to gloss over them, because I think it's equally as important to talk about that.
Yeah.
Their lack of mental growth due to social media, I think is very, very important to note, because when it comes time for them to make decisions about their future, when it becomes time for them to lead their households, to be the quote unquote man of the relationship, they don't know where to take it necessarily. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to be in charge. And it's because I don't think they see enough examples on social media, from whatever that looks like. There's this come in, and I want everybody to be who they are, but there's this come, be who you are, everything will get figured out down the road approach or feeling on social media. And while it's good to be accepting, you have to understand, like, you are responsible for your future and the outcome of it. Yeah, things will work themselves out, but there's a caveat to it. Only if you do some proper planning, you put forth the proper effort, and you take the time to really dive into your future and make sure that things are in line, or you give yourself the best opportunity to have things lined up for you down the road. So I don't want the young men to miss that part of, hey, like, social media is only affecting young girls. No, that's not the case at all. Like, we get it honest too. We get honest too, and it can be as equally as bad for us. So y'all just kind of be aware of that and take heed to that.
And so we mentioned we'll try to do a shorter one. I know Nat's got places to be, but I'll wrap us up with building on your point. I think it's super important that everyone's affected by this, because social media is a part of really everyone's life these days, and there's benefits to it. There's consequences to it, as we've stated a couple of times. With the consequences, I'm going to go out on a limb and make the claim that you mentioned things kind of falling in your lap and just working out. When we're exposed to, if you're watching my Instagram and just all of a sudden, we haven't talked in years, and there's just happens to be a proposal post on it one day or something like that, right? You don't really understand what goes into it. You just see that it happened. And I think we sometimes back off of those conversations, as we've talked about a few different scenarios. We're less likely to talk about how you got there, and it's more of a congratulations and like, cool, that happened. And it's like more of this outcome oriented thing. And there's not as much that goes into the process of it. One of the coolest things with some of my older family is they'll talk through their entire story. And I think that's something that I don't get a lot of with my friends who are married, or my friends who are in super serious relationships and things like that. That could be completely specific to me, but I think there is this expectation that things are just going to work out, and there's not as much emphasis on that process, and that can have negative outcomes as well. I also think that in general, in like relationships, things suffer when you aren't having these conversations and you're expecting things to just work out. Like, are you having conversations about your particular belief systems and orientations when dating? I think that that's a less prevalent thing too. And that's the reason I want to bring that up, is there's no right or wrong way for you to go about your own relationship. That is up to you. We're not here to say, like Mike, you had said, you got to be the man of the house. If there's a relationship and it happens to be 50-50, or whoever's in charge, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not the point at all. So I wanted to come back to that. But it is important to have those conversations and set the expectations, the roles, your beliefs straight with the other person, the same way that we're struggling to do when we come to smartphones and kids. So again, these tough conversations just, at least in my experience, aren't happening as much as I think they need to.
No, I think that's a very, very fair, valid point to wrap up and end on. And I just want to add a couple other things as we wrap out here.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also need to encourage everybody to be open.
Yeah.
You have to hear both sides of the story, because I can remember being back, being a teenager, being a kid, even a young adult. I didn't necessarily want to hear what my parents were saying. Like I was like, okay, y'all don't know anything. Y'all don't know what you're talking about. Y'all haven't been here before. Y'all haven't done this. And those same things that I swore up and down, y'all have no clue what you're talking about, are the same things that I'm running into. Same problems that I'm seeing come up again, or same conflicts that I'm seeing happen. And so had I listened then, I probably would have had, or had I been more open to listening then, I would have had more insight into how to solve the problem, or better resources to solve the problem now. On the opposite side of that same coin, I think for parents, we gotta be open to listening about how the social media is being used, why the kid or whoever is using it, we don't want to say the kid, but whether it could be a coworker who's using it, who finds value in it, why they see the value in it, the value to that specific person is going to be important to them. And so listening, maybe we will pick up and learn something from there. So like you said, the communication piece is going to be huge right now, talking about it, having those conversations, having the self-control, and creating the habits and routine to have healthy relationships with social media and in general. If we work on those things and hit those, I think we'll see a drastic change in those numbers and some of that data as we continue to record and look at it through time.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think one thing that I'm going to say, we'll dive in at some point, I think it's a good topic and it ties in a lot with what we've been talking about here, is feeling valued and the impacts that it has and what that feels like, what goes into that. And I think from the parent and from the child perspective, it has a big role to play in what you retain and what you're willing to value from the other person too.
Yeah.
The credibility that you'll give them and how much you internalize it. So before we go, I don't know if we have a Nat fun fact today. I don't think we do. So we'll give Nat a chance to send us one. I'm not sure she will, but in the meantime, Mike, I want to see if we can each get one thing out there that we'll try to implement this week in terms of improving our own regulations, setting limits, anything that we talked about today. Was there anything that kind of popped up into your head? And if not, then I'll try to get one too.
Yeah, for me, I need to remember the habits, practices, and routine that I created without social media. The life that I lived, how peaceful and calm it felt. I think I can have all those things. I just have to find that happy medium and balance while having social media if I decide to scroll and take a look at a couple of things. So figuring out where that balance is for me and what I need. Also being respectful of the limits that I set. You can set those social media timers where you can't access it. It's easy to hit like ignore for the day reminder or remind me in 15 minutes. But find that timer, find what I want my threshold to be and stick to it. And if I stick to it, I think that ties back into what we've talked about throughout this whole podcast, the discipline piece. If you can stick to it, be disciplined about it, you'll see that discipline start to copy paste in other areas of your life. So that is going to be my goal, is reminding myself and remembering what my healthy, peaceful, calm self felt like without social media and how I can still have that with social media.
Yeah, I think that's a really important one. And I haven't taken a break from social media in a while. And so I don't think I'm going to go a full break this week, but I do want to push myself to avoid a little bit more of that habit where my instinct is to pull my phone out, and like, oh, what's that? Like where you're bored and you just open an app.
Yep.
I've been doing a lot with Reddit, which has its pros and cons. I'm learning some cool things, but completely irrelevant. And there's probably a little bit more I could be doing in terms of other goals that I've had for a while that may even set me up for more success later. So one in particular with the reading, hoping to read a little bit more, scroll a little bit less this week, especially at that bedtime hour. Just set a nice little light and little lamp and get some pages read.
Okay. That's good. Well, that was plenty enough time for us because Nat has a very unfun fact for us. Oh, okay. I mean, I thought we could do better than this, Nat. We'll still read it to him. So, y'all, today's fun fact about Nat is that she is very into heart rate training for running. And Nat was able to add 100 miles in 2023 compared to 2022. So 100 mile difference. That's pretty impressive. Not a fun fact, but adding 100 miles that you didn't have in 2022 is definitely pretty impressive. But yeah, y'all. So Nat is into heart rate training for running. Hopefully we'll have a more fun fact on the next episode. Nat, we got to do better than that. All right. We want fun facts, not facts that are going to put people to sleep. Okay. And jump off the episode. Like, oh.
Nat, I appreciate your fact. I thought it was an interesting fact. So.
Okay, I didn't say it wasn't interesting. I said it wasn't fun. All right, they're two totally different things. All right, Nick.
As long as it's fun to Nat, we'll support her. But
good point.
We have no clear read on if it's fun.
Good point.
We'll have to reconvene.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap out here. If y'all haven't already, like, subscribe, share. Send this episode to somebody if you found anything interesting, cool. We will be coming out with some clips here shortly, so maybe your clip will pop up in there if there was something that you want to have a clip of. Let us know. We'll go back in, we'll go through, crop it, find that timestamp, or if you can send us a timestamp, send it to us. We'll crop it out and maybe we'll find the value in it too, and we'll create a clip for you or for us to post. So we appreciate y'all tuning in. This is Men of Mind, episode 12, and we out of here.
Peace.